This is the final program of Chicago Creative Coalition's Creative Health and Healing program. We do an annual program theme each year. Our mission is to enrich, inspire, and educate creative lives. And I had the brainstorm that it might be interesting to discuss the effect of nature on healing, health, wholeness, especially during the last, couple trying years. And I reached out to Ernie and we had a few casual conversations about it. And we decided that a panel would be the way to go. And he invited a few colleagues to participate today, and I'd like to give you a little overview of who they are. So Ernie Wong is the founding principal of Site Design Group. He has been instrumental in the success of the landscape architecture profession in the city of Chicago. Under his leadership, the firm has gained a reputation for creative design, thoughtful and beautifully detailed urban spaces, and improving the quality of life in urban neighborhoods. An advocate of contextual urban spaces, Ernie has directed award-winning projects, including the acclaimed Mary Bartelme Park, Harry Palmisano Park, and Pingtown Memorial Park in Chicago. We also have Saudia Davis, who is a producer, developer, arts integrator, author, nonprofit executive, and she wrote 33 Ways Not to Screw Up Creative Entrepreneurship. So I know that C3 is going to be anxious to get a copy. Alicia Ponce is an architect and author. She's the founder and principal of AP Monarch, an architecture firm with a keen focus on nature-inspired intelligence. She believes that everyone has the right to space that brings them joy. Since founding AP Monarch in 2007, Alicia's expertise and passion for sustainability has been supported by many clients in designing radically better projects. Alicia's reputation for resilient and eco-conscious architecture secured AP Monarch's role as the sustainability architect and direct protege to Santiago Calatrava and his firm design proposal for the 2019 O'Hare International Airport Global Terminal.
Nice.
Jayson Wong. Yes, there is a relation. He's Ernie's son. He's a highly motivated. Are you still in school, Jayson? Still a graduate student?
I actually just graduated on Saturday, so I'm.
Congratulations, that's exciting. And he's going to bring a mental health perspective to this chat today. And are you still currently employed at Amita Health as counselor there?
I am. Yes.
That's wonderful. So we have a great, excellent, diverse perspectives, and I'll turn it over to you, Ernie, to get started. And
here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go. Thank you so much, Alicia. That was really kind, and really appreciate all the kind words that you've given us. I decided, during our conversations, we really were talking about, how do we talk about this issue of nature and mental health? And I actually did bring up Jayson, and he's actually has a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was thinking, well, it's really interesting because he talks about it and he's out in nature a lot. But friends and family, this is great. Saudia, my dear friend for many, many years. We've talked about all kinds of different things, and Saudia is into all kinds of really interesting things and trouble and making things run. And my friend and colleague, Alicia Ponce, who we are actually working on a project with for the Chicago Park District headquarters in Brighton Park, which is really exciting to see nature being put on a site that is formerly environmentally contaminated, and turning that into a beautiful area for not only the neighborhood, but the headquarters for the Chicago Park District. So we are really excited about that. And I also might mention that Alicia is also my cohort in crime with the Landmarks Commission on in Chicago. So she's wearing a lot of hats. Alicia just gave us the bio of each of us, but I want to ask each of you to, just articulate a little bit about some of the things that you're doing now, and also, along with that, the first question I actually had was the first time you became conscious about nature and how that affected you. And let me start with you, Saudia. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your relationship with nature?
Thank you, Ernie. I don't know if you saw me take a deep breath because I have such a strong connection to the natural world, and it is what literally fuels me. I'm originally from Northern California, Muir Woods specifically, spending most of my youth growing up at Muir Beach. I'm homesick, and I tell everybody I miss the woods, so much so that I named my company Redwood Cove. Redwoods and a beach cove. I actually started at a nonprofit, Smarty Pants Our Leaders, which taught art and gardening here in the city of Chicago when I moved here from New York, because I realized the importance of connecting individuals to what's right underfoot, and that would ground them in an environment where youth under the age of 15 were experiencing a lot of opportunities for violence. And if we could minimize those reactions by putting individuals in nature, that became something that I was passionate about. And so I started that program out at Catalyst Circle Rock and needed somewhere to store my gardening tools when they took me to their storage place, which was a vast building that was a 45 years abandoned theater. And I said, what would it look like to rebuild that? And so when Ernie mentioned as a developer, yes, I am in the entertainment industry and have found a passion in developing and transitioning spaces for transformation. So that space became the Carine Center for the Arts. We broke ground April 2019, and it's thriving and did so through the pandemic. So to answer your question, I was young. I started my first company at 11. I remember it as 7, but my mom was like, no, you were 11, called Nature's Images by Saudia. And I would take photos of roads off of Muir Woods and images, and I would take those photos and make it into a greeting card. So I have always found that connection, but also wanting to share it with others.
So really, nature is entrepreneurship in a way. So yeah. That's so wonderful. Jayson, tell us about the first time that you actually realized that there was nature. I mean, a lot of us take this for granted, that we go outside and we think, oh, this has always been here, but quite frankly, it hasn't been. And it's changing dramatically. But, you're from another generation. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so, well, I was born and raised here in Chicago in the inner city. So my exposure to nature was limited to, Chicago parks, the lakefront on Lake Michigan, and, some parts outside of the city, maybe some state regional parks. But, as I was growing up, my parents decided to send me to a wilderness camp up in Minnesota when I was about 10 years old. They sent my brother and I on a plane and took a 6-hour bus ride up into the middle of nowhere to attend this wilderness camp for, about a week or so. And it was really my first, engagement with nature, learning about nature. And it really kind of opened up my eyes to like what else is out there outside of the city. And so that was kind of, my first spark, right? And after that, I went to high school, and my dad, Ernest Wong, attended the Student Conservation Association when he was my age. And so he said, oh, you have to do this. This also impacted my life. So I think that you'll really thrive doing it. And so what the program was, it was a national youth, group restoration program. So we went to a different part of the US. My first conservation excursion was in Death Valley, California. And so that was for about a month in the desert of camping without running water and cooking our own foods with 8 other people about 16, 17 years old, and 2 counselors. And we, had different projects working with the Bureau of Land Management, from, walkway to hot spring restoration, to cleaning up illegal gun ranges, to, kind of deconstructing illegal structures built on, preserved property and, working towards conservation. And so that really had a huge impact on me, because I saw how, I already had started to develop of how I cared about nature, and how, and I saw how other people didn't so much, and with illegal gun ranges, and how people kind of destroyed or kind of stepped up upon, different environments and didn't care as much. So I decided to go to university, and I thought that I, wanted to move outside the city again, re-immerse myself in nature. So I decided to go to Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada, which is about 2 hours above Seattle. And it was up in the mountains, Pacific Northwest rainforest. And, so that's where I kept learning, got my degree in psychology. And then I came back to, Chicago to get my master's degree in criminology, law, and justice. And so now I'm starting to see how those two, psychology, environmentalism, and criminology are kind of quite interwoven, and I'm starting to think about, how we can work towards including environmentalism into the criminal justice system, whether it's, moving away from carcerality to, getting more engagement and therapeutic response towards.
Well, that's funny. What you failed to mention was that the time that you were in Death Valley, it was the hottest summer they had ever had, 130 degrees. And that first excursion was pretty traumatic as well. Alicia, we're all from different cultures. And it's really, I would love to hear your first immersion or your first consciousness of nature, and your background as well. I mean, because that's so much different than our own experiences as well. Please.
I love to share. Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting just to see how that molded us into what we're doing now. My first connection with nature, I was very young. And I was very young at the time that I knew that I wanted to be an architect. Maybe I didn't know it was an architect, but I knew I wanted to play in dirt and with machines and just build something. I was 6 years old when I came across a construction site, and I just fell in love with the scene. And the bulldozers moving the materials and excavating, and it's just that I fell in love at that moment. And I am the daughter of Mexican immigrants, and growing up, every summer we would go to Mexico, to the state of Michoacan, which is the state where the monarch butterfly migrates to every year, right? And so that was my playground. Growing up, we would just arrive and we were free to roam and play in very green, mountainous landscape, rivers, trees, and just run around and come back when you're hungry, and then go back, go back and play. And we would come back to the southwest side of Chicago, where we were surrounded by industrial factories and just breathing in who knows what. And so that upbringing is very, very, is what molded me today, and why I'm connected to this passion and purpose to build healthy architecture. Our motto is, we design healthy environments. Healthy for you, and healthy for the environment, and healthy for every species that we live with. So that was the beginning for me, and really connecting health to what we do in the building environment, whether it's indoors or outdoors, how does it impact your health? And we all kind of had, not kind of, we did have that experience with the great big pause, right, of 2020. And we were at home and we were going out into the woods, right? There are beautiful woods here, Saudia, that I'll tell you where they are. And we connected with nature and started to realize, you know, that the air was cleaner, the water streams were cleaner, and we just paused. And for me, that was a reflection of, you know, not only our physical health, but our mental health was huge for that. And so that's what we do at AP Monarch. That's been my mission for 15 years and ongoing.
That's wonderful, Alicia. You know, which is interesting because the southeast side of Chicago, Deering, is it? The Deering neighborhood and Hegewisch, and, you know, some of those neighborhoods with this industrial background really defined how our city was built. And when you think about that industry, and when you think about the things that have happened, we've had some things that have occurred throughout the history of Chicago. One of the things that has occurred fairly recently, actually, is cleaning up the Chicago River. But we're still dealing with a lot of air quality. We're still dealing with a lot of things that affect our populations, and particularly disinvested neighborhoods that really are you know, almost regulated to these tough environmental situations. Tell us a little bit, you know, from your background, and because you're working in Chicago now, I mean, and I would imagine every once in a while you go back to your old neighborhood. Has there been progress in terms of, you know, what is going on down there?
Well, so to be clear, I grew up in Summit, Illinois, and the
Okay,
South.
that's still very industrial too.
Yeah, and it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed since before
Bedford Park, yeah.
I ever arrived to this earth till now. It just hasn't changed, and I live nearby, and you still smell, like a couple of miles, and you still smell whatever is emitting from these industrial factories. And you know, and equity is a huge portion of what we do as well, because you can't have, you know, green building with.
Uh-oh, your audio is cutting out. Alicia, your audio is cutting out. Still out there. Okay, I'm gonna switch it, because I'm gonna pose the same question to Saudia about, you know, you were working on the West Side and with this theater, and you know, how does that start to affect kids particularly? I mean, this, you know, that we're living in this dense, harsh environment that don't have a lot of access to nature, and you know, what does that do to our mindset and what's happening?
So interestingly enough, there's a softening that happens, and how we were able to, you know, sort of bring nature. So this school had a unique situation where there was an interior courtyard. It's Catalyst Circle Rock on the west side at Central and Washington. So that was already a unique controlled environment. But to take in this sort of like introduce fruits and vegetables to them that could be grown locally, to expand their sense of taste, color, excitement about something, but just the touching of things, going outside and sitting outside. It's cold, Miss Davis, we're going outside. Yeah, we're going outside. You know, well, it's cold, I understand, but this is part of the seasons, you know. Yeah, we're studying seasons in this class and the science, you know. So there were all of these connection points, very much like root systems, right? And I used a lot of metaphor in our educational programming to help them understand what their relationship to themselves, each other, and nature. And that softening sort of helped them to understand, like, for example, carrots like to grow straight, you know, they would relate to things like that. And there's a great book called Carrots Love Tomatoes, I think. And it's growing certain plants together that protect the other ones. For example, the onion bug, or I'm sorry, the potato bug protects the onion, or reverse that. The smell of the onion kills the potato bug, so the potato bug doesn't kill the potato. Got it? So kids love stuff like that. But it also, in helping them understand growing something, the patience of sustaining a life and watching the outcome helped give them patience. So there's a softening and a sweetness that happens when you educate a child around nature. I was a shy kid. Nobody believes me when I say that, then I get really shy. But I know what's possible. And so I used a lot of what I know. I often found myself sitting with trees, sitting out there. So I just used things that I knew were very helpful to me. And it, interestingly enough, started infusing into the teachers, the front desk staff, softening. Miss Davis, so the kids told me you were, and then so it starts to develop an awareness within the community of the school itself that then supports the children. So very holistic experience. I'm very proud of it.
But one of the things that is interesting is that the kids will listen to you, quite frankly, and I'm just going to bring this right up, is that because you look like them.
Okay. To your point, but I don't talk like them. And
no, that's true.
But right. And so then you there's also the socioeconomic, the differences, right? How I talk, Davis, why you talk like that, or whatever. So I found myself code switching for Black. And that's a term within the Black community where you code switch. Hello, how are you? To fit in, doing it the other way.
Right.
But to your point, Ernie, though, yes and no, because I was a little different and I'm not from Chicago and I don't look or sound like the parents, right? But then also finding that comfort, it was an adjustment. So it wasn't easy. But I guess what I wanted to really impress to your question is that softening, my feeling was that it would reduce the violence. It would reduce behavior that has nowhere to go. And it works really when children are connected and understand that there's more to them than just what they see, like literally what's underfoot.
Which is a great segue that I'm going to bring to Jayson, because your job at Amita, I tell people, well, he works in the psych ward and he puts people in straitjackets, which is not true, but but you deal with a lot of people with mental health issues, and talk about that. I mean, the things that you've seen and the things that you've heard of some of these patients that come in. And quite frankly, I mean, they're coming into this institution for a lot of different reasons. Talk a little bit about that and what you're seeing.
Yeah, so I work with a lot of different people, primarily Chicago residents. And my home base, the floor that I typically work on is the all-female or female identifying floor. And I engage with patients from ages from 18 to 65, like 70. And they're all experiencing different individual, mental health crises to different past experiences. I kind of talk to them and work with them about engaging in coping mechanisms to help them improve their life and kind of like acknowledge what they can do. Just working away from, oh, this person has did it to me. I have no autonomy or control over my life. And that's kind of one of my main themes that I try to have in our discussions with other patients. And in regards to green spaces, when I have these conversations, I always start off with, what interests you? What are your habits? What are your hobbies? What do you like to do? What do you like to do with others? And very rarely are any of those activities, engaging with the natural world. And I find that quite unsettling because I acknowledge my privilege of being able to grow up and go to Minnesota to engage in a wilderness camp, or to go to do the Student Conservation Association and travel to different national parks. But so many people who are, young and like grown adults, have never had those kinds of experiences of walking through the woods, taking a deep breath, seeing something beautiful. Just the other day, I thought, oh, wow, that's the first time I've seen a robin with a live worm in its mouth, so up close, not on, Planet Earth or Planet Earth 2 or Planet Earth by Snoop Dogg. So I really, am hoping that we can start to engage, environmentalism and engagement, and some sort of engagement with green and natural spaces, with people who are struggling with mental health crises, but also people who are incarcerated, whether it's in a mental health institution or, in a criminal justice, carceral state. So.
That's amazing. And Alicia, we're going to try this again, and I'm hoping the volume, your audio still works here. Please unmute yourself and let's do the sound check real quick. Yeah.
Okay, how's that?
Yes. All right. You're back. All right. And that being said, what Jayson has talked about is these kids that don't have this opportunity, and we are very privileged in a lot of ways. When you look at this new project that we're working on in Brighton Park, and Brighton Park is, it's a really interesting neighborhood, largely Latinx, primarily a Mexican population, and there are some that may have the same experiences that you've had of going back to Mexico and being able to enjoy the things that you've enjoyed. But there are still a lot of kids that have not. And that's still a tough neighborhood. What do you think that this facility, this will do to this neighborhood?
Well, it'll bring pride for their neighborhood for one, and it'll bring comfort and the sense of, so our role for the project is community engagement. And we like to say that we can speak architecture and we can speak Spanish. So we're the bridge for how to communicate, the ideas that are being brought to the community, and then, bringing the community's thoughts back to the ideas, right? So a lot of it in these neighborhoods is safety too. And the way that the site is designed, I think is very comforting, right? It's something very, very different in the concrete jungle that it is. Our many pockets of our city is just concrete, and so it'll offer, I think, pride in the community of so many people that were born and raised there, and that part of the city is in a green space deficit, like huge green space deficit. There is no green space. And so I think that it'll be a very good for the community.
You brought up something that I found really interesting, because one of the first things that you talked about was how that you felt that it was going to bring a lot of pride to the community. And with pride comes identity on who you are. And I think what I find interesting is that we discover who we are, which is actually the theme of this session, right? We discover who we are through nature. And when we build our identity and we recognize who we are, we start to build on that. Maybe one of the things that happens is that we get a little bit more confident about who we are and what we can bring to the world. And maybe that's one of these things that can start to occur in a neighborhood that is now rising again with their identity.
And their voice, and
exactly.
this site, this project will attract pollinators, right? And just like Saudia was saying, or I think Jayson was saying, noticing a bird with a worm, and right, you start to notice these things, right? One of the big things that I was very excited about that the community brought up is they wanted to make sure that the birds would not collide into the building. Let's protect the birds,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
So that was one of the biggest things is what are you doing to protect the birds? So it's very, very important. And no matter what zip code you are, you want to protect your environment. You want to protect the nature.
And hopefully what this will also bring is this recognition that nature is important. We have to protect it. And we're hoping that, with this project, we start to build another generation of kids who start to think a little bit more about, not throwing their trash on the street and recycling and things like that will affect our earth. And even that little bit will help, just a little bit. Saudia, we are coming out of this pandemic. And it's been tough, quite frankly. I mean, I've gone through my career of continuing to build our company, and I've been really excited about it. But these last couple of years, even though we've continued to grow, as every once in a while, I'll think to myself, I've never really felt this way before. This kind of a little bit of depression, and now we're coming out of it. What do you think that the pandemic has done to all of us, and how do we start to use nature to kind of evolve into a better ourselves, to better ourselves?
That is, thank you, and Ernie, for asking that question. One thing I will say, just to flat out, when the pandemic happened, everybody realized the pause. The one thing that I experienced is that ever since I've lived in New York and in Chicago, I call it my coat of armor that I put on when I'm in the city, the urban environment, to feel safe. And it was the first time that it was so quiet that I felt like I was at home in nature, around the woods, around the ocean. And it was like I wanted to protect that, right? And I think, during the pandemic, unlike a lot of people, was tasked with a job to keep creatives creating when I was the director for the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship. And so it required me to carry this energy and keep everybody moving. And as people started to come back in, and now I'm the executive director for Collaboration, a theater company that devises original works within the community telling its story and giving a platform for that to happen, for racial justice and healing and all the things. Collaboration, like other entertainment companies, figured out a way to do it on these screens. Okay, so if you just work with me here. So all of a sudden that stillness became active again because we had this virtual space that we could jump into. Much like everyone else figuring their way, my concern was, how do we maintain this level of peace that we all felt as we start to reintegrate back into the practice? And personally, I struggle with that balance of wanting to be in nature. I hear the birds where I live now, and I'm like, oh my God, the birds are chirping, It's almost like the starving of the little things to connect us to our core of who we are, because we are nature. This is a nautilus. The nautilus is one of my favorite symbols in nature because we start small and we expand out. But how do we do that while still maintaining who we are, that quiet space? So meditation is something that I practice in order to connect there. I think it's important for everybody to find that quiet, still voice And I think that, especially being in the entertainment industry, right? Like we've got a big play tomorrow, or thing with NBC. It's going to be amazing, all the things. But it's like people are on these devices, right? Finding that quiet space, taking a walk, really being present for your dog or your cat or your fish, right? Those sweet moments. I hope that's answering your question, Ernie. I think
It
that
is.
if we can, though, through this upcycle of where we are in a potential recession, cost of things, materials, our architects, right, builders, we can find these quiet spaces for ourselves, then maybe that'll ripple out into the people we work with and then the people that we're around, right, and holding that space, but not letting it get too heavy at the same time, because that can be a lot.
That's great. Jayson, you're the youngest of us all, and this new generation. What do you think the future is? If you know you're looking at a new future and new kind of, you're about to move to Minneapolis, and you know you're going to be closer to the woods and everything else. But as you know, folks your age who have gone through this pandemic, and I talk about kids don't know a whole lot about history because they don't have enough history of themselves to really understand what that relationship is. But you know, what do you think your generation and the people coming behind you are looking for as we all move forward? Because quite frankly, there's a lot of blame to baby boomers like me that we're not leaving you with a whole lot.
Well, I think that someone who, oh gosh, where do I start? I think that my generation and people who are younger than me, even still, really do care about the environment. And I think that the engagement with social media has been a huge catalyst to kind of spreading awareness about environmental impact, climate change, and harm reduction when it comes to our environment. If we look at even Greta Thunberg, right? She is so young. Her speeches, her statements, her outcries and calling out towards politicians and people in power has been really impactful for not just myself, but some of my friends and colleagues, to see that people who there is no age limit about when you can care and what differences you can make when it comes to our environment and the climate. And so I'm just going to say I'm a huge advocate for, community gardens, because just like Saudia was saying, kids love to watch things grow. It's almost miraculous to watch a tomato grow from a small little pod of green to something large that's red they could fit in your hand. Like for a lot of young people in Chicago, certainly, have never experienced taking care of something like that, nurturing process. And I think that community gardens are a great space to incorporate different people from in the neighborhood, in the community, to work together to, that they could give back to themselves and give back to their neighbors. I think it will, in regards to the pandemic, I think community gardens is a great space where people can be outdoors, because now that we're more aware of contagion, outdoor spaces has become more of an attraction, right? And so those community gardens are a way for people to still move away from that social isolation that has been forced upon us by the pandemic. So I think just getting children, people who are from the ages of like 5, 3, doesn't matter how old they are, to start working in the dirt, start planting something new and letting it grow. I think that's really key. And I don't think that's something that people my age or younger are afraid of or have no interest in. I think that's something really big, because people are like, oh, we're really into farmers markets now. But why spend $3 for one apple when you can grow it in your own backyard? So
I love it. I love it. So Alicia, you're the one with these kids. What are you going to teach them?
Oh, they know. They know. No, actually today was a very, very good day. They go to the school, the Academy for Global Citizenship. And
Oh,
today was
great
the
opening. Today was the opening. Yeah.
and for those that are familiar with it, it's the groundbreaking was today, and it is going to be a net zero school, K through 8th grade. And my son, who didn't tell me, he's 10 years old, he was part of the green team, and he said a couple of words, and for all of the kids to be a part of that. And in 18 months is the day that they'll be able to walk in and use the school. It's just the building is one with the environment, right? It's one with the people using the school. And so we have a lot of conversations at a much younger age. If we had dinner with some friends, and they threw their organic waste out, my kids will be like, where's your compost bin, like they will call them out. So they know very well. They're very conscious of it. And we talk about the indigenous ways of your decision today. How will it impact 7 generations from now? So it's just a constant conversation that we have, and it's a lot of fun too, because they will call us out, or anybody here out.
I love it. This has been so much fun, talking to all three of you. It's been just such a pleasure to hear your thoughts and get together with, really such a diverse uh, perspective of our world. And, the things that you've said today really brings me a lot of hope. And we keep on talking about things that our world is ending, blah 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 blah. No, it's not. And I think that you're doing so much to all make life a lot better. And we all are discovering ourselves. With that, I'm going to end this session with a few slides. It is shameless plugging of who we are as we discover ourselves through nature. And so this is, one of our team, which I'm so excited about, that we actually have grown through the pandemic from 26 people to now 42 people, and all over the country and all over the world, speaking a number of different languages, and continuing to help different communities throughout not only the city of Chicago, but also throughout the city of Chicago, but also the rest of the country. Pingtown Memorial Park continues to be one of the great places that people like to go to, if they can find it. That's the trick. And June 25th is going to be the Dragon Boat races, which you see here right now. And if you haven't seen that, you should go down and take a look at it. And one of the things that I like to talk about is just how people like to use this park and how they use it, to experience nature, and how they use it to experience the city in a different way. And it's really interesting to see that, because, these are a lot of immigrants that come to this park, and they feel like it's home. And I really, I'm really proud of that they're able to find this place of solace and discover themselves. And it's all over the place. I mean, people just find this joy. And I think that it's really super important that we take that time to find that joy in nature. Even in some of these denser areas, such as Lakeshore East, the park at Lakeshore East, surrounded by all these buildings. But a lot of people that actually, what I've heard is that they moved to Lakeshore East because they had this park within it. And actually they were moving from places where they felt they had better views, but they saw this park and decided to move to it for a lot of different reasons, as Jayson was talking about, the socialization of ourselves as well. And we're coming out of this pandemic. It's not, you know, nature helps us find ourselves, but other people help us find ourselves as well. And so that socialization is really important. And we start to discover it, and we still use technology to tell each other, you know, from across the world that we're doing well. And this enjoyment just goes everywhere. And when you're able to feel the water and smell the flowers and being able to really experience nature in its fullness is so important, I think, for all of us. Unfortunately, you know, I'm stuck behind I choose to be stuck behind a computer a lot. But now the weather's getting better. We need to get outside. And if you haven't been there, this is Palmisano Park in Bridgeport. And I highly recommend you to go here. This is 27 acres, the same size as Millennium Park, on a former quarry that was used as a construction dump site for the city of Chicago for years. And now it's this park that you get in there and you have no idea that you're in the city of Chicago. You walk through it, you discover new things every time. It is a mixture of both prairie and wetland. And these are the things I think that really start to interest you in, you know, what was Illinois like way back when? And this is one of those ways to imagine that. And this is the evolution of it, where it was a big giant hole in the ground, 300 some feet deep. And as it filled up, it kept on going. And now people just, you know, people go there and they find that this is really the heart of the neighborhood now. And we're really excited about how people continue to find themselves and get better and do all the things that they need to do within this space. This is the, you know, one of the classes that takes place, and people find their own identity here as well, and learn how to do things that are really important, such as fishing. This is one of the few places in the city of Chicago you can actually catch fish in here. They stock it. Those fish are getting bigger every year, and it's so much fun. And if you like the urban spaces, Mary Bartelme Park in the West Loop has really transformed that entire neighborhood. And it's been interesting to see how, you know, I get on an airplane sometimes and people ask me what I do, and I'm reluctant to tell people I'm a landscape architect because the first thing they say is, well, you know, I'm having problems with my tulips. And I don't really want to talk about your tulips, you know. So I tell them, well, I actually increase the value of your real estate. It's what I tell them. And, you know, they look at me really funny. They're like, really? How do you do that? And we build the parks, which is another issue, though, that is evolving around the city. Is, you know, we want to design these parks and do these beautiful places. Alicia and I were talking about the new Chicago Park District headquarters, and the biggest fear in that neighborhood is gentrification. And so, you know, we've got to find a way that we can do this and provide these amenities for the neighborhoods, but be able to keep people where they are, and without the fear of displacement. We were lucky here because the West Loop used to be just industrial space. But we find places that, you know, kids are able to help each other and learn things and learn their motor skills. And this is like the first time, this is a shot that was taken right after the lockdown let up, and people actually found these spaces immediately, learning how to social distance. And we're going to continue to do that. So, you know, we have a ways ahead of us. This is the last project that I'm going to show you, is the Riverwalk. If you haven't been down here, this is that area actually between Michigan Avenue and Lakeshore Drive. And so, you know, you're familiar with the Riverwalk where the city winery is, and it's all hardscape. The previous mayor had asked us before he left, he said, can you make this a little bit more park-like and be able to take some of the overflow from the popularity of the Chicago River? And we went ahead and did that, and discovered that, you know, people like to sit in different ways in different places. It's just, they get to know each other and they start to interact in a way that that we all find love. So with that, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And we will take, any of our panel will take any questions that you have. And Alicia, you could just, or just shout it out. You can unmute yourself and ask a question of any one of us.
I just want, oh, go, please.
I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I feel like healthier from having listened to you and seeing your work. It's lifting. And I'm curious, what if there's one, like, while designing spaces in Chicago, are there certain kinds of obstacles you keep running into over and over that are endemic, or is every space different? And like, what's the most challenging obstacle you've had to overcome in the park world in Chicago?
You know, for us, the toughest part is pretty much every site in the city of Chicago has some level of contamination. And so the environmental remediation always is a question that is there, as well as stormwater. I mean, we want to create these places that actually keep the stormwater, the rainwater within that site. And we do that through a variety of efforts of making sure there's proper drainage below that, and that there's an ability to keep that water from going into the city's combined sewer system in a much slower rate. So we're able to detain that water on site. The biggest problem, though, you know, I mean, I can talk about these things, but the biggest issue that we're facing now is really doing spaces that the community really wants. And that requires, and Alicia is helping us with this in terms of the community engagement. I mean, we went through a process doing the Brighton Park Park District headquarters of really engaging with the community. But you have to have that honest conversation. And if you aren't willing to listen to the community, you're just building another park or another space that, you know, that there's no ownership there. And I think that's really important. So that's what we strive to do.
Thank you so much. Wow.
Next question.
I have some, thank you for being here. I totally believe that nature is restorative. One thing, you know, I've had a personal experience where I've had a health issue during the pandemic, and I've had experiences with 2 different hospitals, and one hospital brought nature inside. And that was it's a totally visceral feeling to be getting treatment in a place that has bamboo trees and the colors are beautiful, versus the other one who has beautiful terrazzo floors, but but it's very, which I go, that's nature right there. But it's just, you know, I would feel so physically different being in those 2 spaces. And I get that feeling when I go outside too. And I love all the spaces that you've designed. I frequent them often, but it was like also how important it was to bring nature inside too, for our healing. So I just wanted to share that.
Alicia, maybe you could comment on that because it is the architecture.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, it's bringing in elements of what we call biophilia. And biophilia is you want to bring in the colors, the shapes, shades, and lighting. It's all an art form that brings comfort to that person. And in mimicking nature, it's called biomimicry. And so that's another technique, a building science technique, that we mimic the systems of nature We're all familiar with photosynthesis with leaves, and that's how solar panels, were modeled after that. And we model acoustics from, that structure of the owl's wings. So we have to be, so I have become like a sort of a biologist scientist. It's pulling me into that direction, and respecting what nature has already knows how to do, So I'm glad that you brought that example up, because it makes a huge difference for healing, for learning, and just relaxing.
That's
Agree.
great.
I just want to say thank you, number one, to all of you, and that I didn't realize that that was what I was missing after the whole pandemic thing, because I haven't been out. I used to go out in parks and nature all the time. I was raised, my parents gave me a very strong sense of the environment, and we went on trips every summer to national parks and all different kinds of, state parks. And I just can't believe that it's been too long since I've been out there, and I want to go right now and go and find a park. So thank you.
Cindy, the weather's getting better. Absolutely, it's time
Yes.
to do that.
Yes.
Anybody else with a question or comments? Somebody's got to have a comment. or
Yeah,
question.
thank you
Sorry.
again, all of you. I'm just wondering, because Chicago is what it is, how much is public safety now a consideration when you're actually doing designs?
Public safety is huge, and this is one of the things that we continuously talk about, and this is why the community engagement is so important up front, because if you're designing for the community itself, and truly designing for the community, not what you think the community wants, but what they want, there is a sense of ownership, and that's with that sense of ownership becomes it populates that space. And when you populate that space, there's way more eyes on everything that is going on. And quite frankly, people who are doing bad things don't want to do it around other people. So they're going to go do it somewhere else where there's less people. And so, you can't stop it entirely, but it is one of those things that the more popular you make it, the better off you are. And so we talk about things like, are there food vendors that come to this area, that draws people, or are there other activities and programs, when they're just starting, summer dance in some of the parks? And I'm really excited about that, because it really brings like everybody from young and old to everywhere. Saudia, please.
I'm going to compliment Ernie Wong here, because we've not discussed the, I can't think of the word, the eating places on 75th. We call that the
boardwalk.
The boardwalk. So to what Ernie was saying, individuals, when you engage them, because we did that on the west side as well, we asked the community what they wanted. People protect what they love and what they care for. And so it minimizes that. And so with the al fresco dining, that's what I was looking for. The boardwalk on 75th Street that Ernie Wong designed, taking the boards that had been holding up the Michigan Avenue build from all of the destruction, and use those boards to design an eating space on 75th Street. There wasn't any violence, right? Sure, there was the pandemic, but actually the businesses started to do and thrive more because people had more places to sit, to engage. It's quite fun. I encourage everyone to take a look at it. You can't miss it. It's a hyper green, but the community really protected it. And so that's something to consider, in that to give the community, somebody mentioned pride earlier, but also to have faith in the community, right? That when we make these investments, that people really will take ownership and value it, and then they feel valued. That's the key part. And that's why asking and doing the community engagement that Alicia is doing is so important, because individuals feel valued and then they value.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, people just want to be heard. Who doesn't want to be heard, right? And once you're heard and you would take care of your community, and that question on safety, it's, lighting is a very important component of that lighting design, and you want to make it feel comfortable, but it also has a purpose, right, for safety. And then the outdoor furniture, right? And so outdoor furniture is also, is it inviting, or is it telling you, don't, this is not for you? So it's all it's all a science. I love it. I mean, I just love doing what we do, because it's just a puzzle and creating experiences for people to just be joyful, right? And that's what I think we've been, my family, I take my kids to every single park that you saw in that slideshow. They know every single park. And we just have fun. We have fun, and we relax and play and eat. And that's what it's for, just to relax and enjoy nature.
All right, we have time for one more question, I think. And I want this question to go to Jayson, so ask a good one, because he's a smart one here. He just got his master's degree.
Jayson, I am curious about the seating that was in one of the pictures in one of the, I think it was on the Riverwalk, where it looks like slats of wood in a wave shape. Did you create that from your head? Is that is there a name for that
No.
furniture? Can I put it in my living room?
That actually was
bring that-
store bought. It was store bought.
No,
No, seriously. Yeah, there's a manufacturer that makes that.
Who are they?
It's a company called Street Life.
Nice. I just looking at it makes you want to lay on it. Like
Yeah.
it's like such a wonderful visual body moment.
It is comfortable. But we want a question for Jayson, because he's our future.
Oh, sorry.
They actually also had that type of seating at the University of British Columbia, where I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, and they had it, across our campus. And like you said, yeah, it's so inviting, like the different shapes in ways, you could lay on it, sit on it, relax, like to have like enough space to do whatever you want, to engage with others or sit by yourself and read a book is really phenomenal. So I was making that comparison with the parks that you have.
Can I ask a question?
Here's a question for you, Jayson. I thought it was a really great insight about the power of social media and your generation and the ability to connect and mobilize. How do you see that power and access to actually mobilize in person and bring action and connect and kind of get us away from our screens? Do you have some thoughts or insights on that?
Yeah, so I've actually, I use social media quite a bit, whether it's, from Instagram. I try to stay away from TikTok because that just absorbs a lot of my time. You get lost, spend 3 or 4 hours. So I don't, have that on my phone. But what I have come across is that there's a lot of promotion for different sites around different major cities, and especially within Chicago. I think it's location based also, but you see these highlight reels of beautiful landscapes that you can engage in Chicago, and I see them constantly every day, and I think that's one of the biggest ways that we can move towards promoting natural spaces and parks within a city. So that, either from attracting people who already live there to people who are visiting from another place, or just right outside the city. Because, when you think of Chicago, you think, just like New York, concrete jungle. And I think that we could start to move away from that by, having these, highlight reels constantly flowing in our social media bases. So people are like, oh man, I saved this, this highlight reel of Palmisano Park, and this is where I want to go to like cool off, or Mary Bartelme Park, where I could cool off in those misty gates of metal that, those are so cool. So I think that, yeah, just, it really gets people to identify what's really out there, quickly while they're just scrolling through their friends, photos. So it's pretty cool.
Can I share something really quick? Because Jayson, you just made me think of something. And thank you
Absolutely.
for asking that question, Alicia Dale. Is it Dale or Daly?
It's Dale, Alicia Dale. You got it right.
Dale. Collaboration every summer does Peace Book and goes to the parks. And that's how I became familiar with them in 2013. It was actually Hamilton Park. And we have these beautiful field houses, right? So a theater company activates the space and then has these incredible performances. And as I'm going to actually talk to my team about creating a visual reel of nature. Because when we're talking about racial reconciliation and healing and unpacking and unloading and rebuilding together, nature is instrumental, and it's actually mission aligned with who Collaboration is. So I'm going to take that back to my team and include that.
There you go.
That's great. Well, thank you so much.
We thank you. No, this was a lot of fun, and really appreciate you all hosting us, and really appreciate this discussion. It's been a lot of fun.
We do as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Take care.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Be well. Good night.